Whether reason will prevail depends only partly upon us. We must hope and strive for the best. We must prepare for the worst.
Welcome to this episode of Clearer Than Truth. I'm Nathan Kiker. Our guest today is Ram Charan. Ram is a business advisor and speaker who spent decades coaching top CEOs and boards around the world. He's the author of more than 30 business books, including the bestseller, Execution, and his latest book is China's 90% Model. China has America by the throat. Here's how to fight back and win, which argues that Beijing is using massive industrial overcapacity to dominate critical global industries and strip out U.S. manufacturing power. Ram, thanks for joining.
I am honored to be with you.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity for people to look at the world as it is changing every single day.
Certainly is, and it is changing rapidly. But one thing is that consistent, Ram, for 30 years, the West operated on the assumption that economic integration would inevitably lead to political liberalization. Your new book, China's 90% Model, essentially declares that era dead. Are we looking at a standard trade rivalry, or is this a fundamental restructuring of the global order into two blocks?
It is even more fundamental.
Even more fundamental?
The declared intent of President Xi and CPC is the best way to govern a nation is autocratic, top-down, like the CPC. Eliminate, as far as you can, the order created by United States. Third, to do that, use the 90% model to obliterate the industrial capacity of each of such nations and build the capacity strength, particularly in the Southeast Asia, Central Asia, and eventually Latin America. But the mission is what Soviet Union could not do. Leninist Marx philosophy, first do in China. Second, make sure it can happen. You reduce the effectiveness of the United States to eliminate the anchored global economic political system it has developed after the war. That's the goal.
Yeah. You describe a Chinese strategy that isn't just about winning market share, but as you said, to dominate or obliterate, but about achieving total industrial dominance, owning 90% of the capacity in critical sectors. In a world where efficiency is no longer the primary metric, how does a Western leader justify the higher cost of national security to a board still obsessed with 90s style globalization?
Yeah, I think, Nathan, I want to clarify this.
Yeah.
It's not just dominant share. It is eliminating the capability of the opposite nation, not to build one. That is a big difference. So they have market share of 90% in solar. They will have 90% share of EVs. If they have it at marginal cost, no nation is going to build that capability again. They have destroyed 10 industries already in most of the Western countries. The next 10 are targeted. And new 10 are going to be announced in the next few weeks. So the idea here is not just dominate, but eliminate ability to have those industries, and they are succeeding.
Why? What is their goal for eliminating these industries?
Because if the war comes, the competing nation will not win. And you will then control the market for the future. Today is $110 trillion economy. 3% per annum is a good estimate for the next 20 years. It will create a huge amount of new GDP. They want to own most of it. And that will reduce the standard of living of the democratic countries unless they do something. This is the thing we need to clarify. It's not just dominance, it's eliminating ability to have those industries. So we have 10 industries that's already being eliminated. Solar is one. EV will be the next one. Furniture is gone. Shoes are gone. I have a list of all those 10 in the book. It has the list of the next 10 and more 10 coming.
So, why does China see it as a necessary thing that they need to eliminate these industries? Why can't, eliminate their competitors? Why is it that they can't have a multipolar world where they're in lockstep with the
They don't
mainstream?
want its ideology like Hitler wanted. This is the continuation of the Russian Soviet Union. They failed. Deng picked it up. And then they learned from Lee Kuan Yew from Singapore how to create economic strength. They now have it. And now they are ready to go outside China to achieve the mission that the world should be Leninist, Marxist, autocratic, down. They've demonstrated to the world by that model how you can grow so well. And they have high quality products and marginal cost dirt cheap. Ratio is 3 to 1. $3 will cost on the West, $1 marginal cost by China. You get dominant market share, you earn foreign exchange, bring it home. Last year they brought 1.25 trillion from the world trade surplus. This year I'm forecasting 1.6. Over 5 years it will be 10 trillion. They will own that. It's the ideological control of the world. Japanese emperor tried in 1926. Hitler tried by the World War II basis. Napoleon tried it. Alexander the Great tried it. She is trying through economic strangling. It's a fact. You can verify it. It's all there, industry by industry. But people are not aware of it because the people who consume Chinese goods, they buy cheap, high quality, but they don't know what are the effect on their future currency, future standard of living. And that's where it is insidious. It's underwater. Most governments are beginning to recognize that. Industries that are affected, they know it. Many of them are shutting down.
Yeah. We had Yukon Huang, who was the China director for the World Bank, on about 3 weeks ago. And
Hmm.
one of the things that he talked about was that China's economy in reality could be much stronger if it allowed for migration within some of its regions, but it does not. I'm curious your take on that. Why is it that China isn't allowing for that migration? Is it just to build an industrial base, or do they have another reason?
You're talking immigration within China,
Yeah.
from rural to cities.
Hmm.
Yeah. First, I have to tell you, even though I spent a ton of time there, they have a hell of a time to accommodate all the rural people who want to come in there. The use of services, the availability of those. Plus, now they do have unemployment of the youth. Don't want to exacerbate that in the cities because that becomes a hotbed for internal strife against the CCP. There
Hmm.
are 400 million people, according to some data, that have to hop on jobs here now today, not tomorrow, here jobs today, not tomorrow. So that's a way to prevent anything that can go against the CCP. Their concern is the internal survival of CCP. They're no longer concerned that the outside people will topple CCP as they had believed at the Tiananmen Square.
Does so one of the central theses that you're arguing is that China cares about spreading its ideology and its view on governance and philosophy. Does China care if its trading partners have the same views? For example, for many years, people have talked about the Belt and Road Initiative that China is doing to grow its economy. Do they care if their partners in places such as Latin America or South America have the same philosophy and ideology?
First, I want you to know they drive it, not just care. Russia is a direct copy. In Indonesia, this is gradually moving. So they're going to institute wherever they can, particularly where they have given loans and the loans are not being paid. They use coercion. Lots of examples of that. It's not they, please note, it is President Xi, one single person, personally driving those decisions. Is consistent, persistent, is very strategic. If I were a Chinese, I will be very proud of him for that particular part.
Yeah.
Brilliant strategy.
So, do you think Belt and Road is working so far? Is China achieving both its economic and ideological goals from it?
If you look at the milestones, it's succeeding very well. Here, he has the power to stop any industry of any country, and there are no easy solutions. That's huge first step in eliminating somebody's capacity, capability, and somebody's freedom. They demonstrated that in October 2025. They stopped supplying magnets, and here everybody backed off because it attacked two major industries, the chemical and the automotive. And then all the Western people have to back off. And they got 12-month reprieve to figure out what to do.
What should the U.S. do to counter China?
It's no longer the issue of countering. It is negotiating a way to get the 90% model to end. You have to give something to take something. And that's what they have to be working in the next 9 months. I should say not 5 months for negotiations. And President Trump will go to China
Mhm.
in the next 90 days. And they have to set this one up for give and take. It is the reduction of the 90% model, then everything else will fall in line because the model is create excess capacity equal to the 90% of the world demand. And the cost marginal ratio is 3-to-1. There's no way you can compete on that basis. First, you won't have that scale. The second, they're high quality, highly efficient. So they are really very good.
One of the things that a lot of our guests have said, and I have thought for a long time, is that China has an authoritarian, both political and economic model, meaning if she or the CCP decides something, it simply happens. The US, on the other hand, they have to deal with Congress, the judiciary branch, etc. So our approach to things such as trade and foreign policy will be slowed and hampered. An example of this is with tariffs, where President Trump about a year ago announced Liberation Day with incredibly high tariffs on China and the rest of the world. But then the Supreme Court rolled it back within the past 2 months. Do you think the US can even try to push back and to overcome this? Or do you think that China's governing and economic model of authoritarianism works better?
Nathan, the tariffs does not stop the 90% model. It's the wrong approach.
What would be the right approach?
What right approach are going to negotiate that certain things they have to not sell, and they will in return to give technology. So they reduce the capacity of that industry. Tariffs do not reduce the 90% model. They tried. They can put 200%. Americans pay that. Chinese don't pay that. And that 90% model plus currency depreciation, plus all the aid subsidies they give. We got to break this model down product by product, industry by industry, and negotiate, not remain at 100,000 feet.
Do you think President Trump and U.S. leadership have an understanding of the 90% model?
I have no doubt because I presented that to the Secretary of Commerce in detail. I presented that in detail to the person who is acquiring the rare earth materials. They know it.
What do they say that they are doing from the U.S. side?
They agree with my analysis. The Secretary of Commerce said, I agree. Trump administration agreed. So I had a Fox interview. It so happened by chance that President Trump saw the whole 9-minute interview. And then he called Maria Bartiromo, asked my name and phone number. And then I got to see on the Zoom for a full hour, Secretary of Commerce Lutnick presented it. She said, we agreed, took my name and everything, and they are working on it. Yes, there are no, I believe number of congressional people understand that. Bipartisan support is there.
So, what sort of policy shifts do you think will happen from the U.S. towards China over the next 6 months into the next year?
It's going to be a year minimum. They're going to give something first because in the election year, farmers matter in American election. So sell soybeans and give some technology. China wants only the technology from the United States. You give technology, they become high military power again going forward. Build industries they can't build without technology from Europe, from the United States, from Denmark, from Japan, and from South Korea. And they want to proceed very fast to be able to then, part of their strength, their ability to eliminate the industrial capabilities of the West. So everybody is scratching his head what to do. And that's what Trump is trying to do to get to the negotiating table and see what needs to be done. Now, I want you to know my view. Today, there is a global war. Everybody must understand that. Iranian war has affected every single country. So anybody who's affected, they are now in a global war.
How do you think the conflict in Iran impacts China?
China had a precautionary thing. They have been storing fuel. They've been storing water. They've been storing food. So they can live with it. But China is helping Iran, helping Russia. They're not participating directly. China helped Pakistan when India-Pakistan skirmish took place. So China, that means Trump and Xi are the two people caring and fighting, negotiating, creating the global order of the future. Right now, President Xi has the upper hand.
Okay. Do you think that China, a lot of people think that China would be incentivized to take Taiwan within the next few years? What is your view on this? Does China have a strategic imperative?
I have a view. I don't have a truth. I have a view. I have been saying all the last 5 years, President Xi's goal is not Taiwan. It's a way to keep the fires burning. He will not attack Taiwan. He will have Taiwan surrender or let it continue. His goal is America. His goal is not Taiwan. They have said many times they will not fire the first shot. President Xi has been saying all the time, if attacked, we have to behave. We have to fight. But he will not start because he loses his mission if he starts a military war.
You talk about the 72-hour scenario. Could you give us a description of that, what it looks like?
Remind me, 72-hour scenario? What did I write?
So, no, it's just that you've written specifically that within 72 hours of a total export freeze, Western defense contract, a lot of people will talk about this as well, but Western defense contractors couldn't build missile guidance systems, and medical companies couldn't ship MRI machines. I guess the question is this: is the 90% model just a commercial strategy, or is it a preemptive blockade that exists without a shot being fired?
No, having been 50 companies in China watching them, going inside them, it is solely on the exports.
How much ability does, I don't think a lot of people understand this, but how much ability does Chinese leadership have to control exports? How quickly can they navigate and move for the export policy?
100%. President Xi runs it personally. They have a small groups. They cut through the bureaucracy. Their people in government are highly confident. They may even make a decision on a price of something. He does that. He's running that personally. He has a goal. He got 1.25 trillion, fantastic currencies. I'm predicting 1.6 in 2026. In 5 years, it will be 10 trillion cumulative. Then you will see the world, what's happening.
So tell us this: what happens with that surplus from trade?
He's using for military, buying companies, buying gold. There's 2,000 tons of gold. Price of gold is high because in the last 3 years, they've been buying, and therefore the price of gold has gone up. So others begin to buy.
Yeah. Well, how does China view its friends within their 90% strategy?
There are no friends except North America and Russia. None. Don't make an assumption they have friends.
So you wouldn't say they're
Cuba
friends?
needed them. Venezuela needed them. They are desperate. There is no single country who will call China in reality, not public, as a friend, because they have used coercion with almost any country that did not do what they wanted to do. And all countries know that. Not Kazakhstan, not Central Asia. They all have that. Publicly, they talk one thing, inside, not so.
Okay. So looking forward, what incentives do these other countries, such as those in Latin America and in South America, have to continue to deal with China? What do they get out
So
of
we
this?
got to go, Nathan, we got to go country by country, not region.
Please, yeah.
Yeah. So Mexico is totally different as North America. Brazil is totally different from Colombia. Peru, China has a port. Argentina has a naval base from China. So that is encircling by having routes of their own for the trade flow. Because as the economy grows from 110 trillion to 150 trillion, all that will be processed in China and will be having their own routes to control the world's economy.
Interesting. If you were to look at and to estimate, and you've done this in other places, but if you were to estimate the next 10 years and the next 20 years,
Yeah.
what does the global order look like in terms of China versus the US? Who's in charge? And is there any chance that it could change?
Depends, but I think that China's grip on the West and democratic countries will increase in a major way. I don't see enough action together that will reduce the 90% model. Without that, you cannot reduce China's forward march of gaining the industrial power of the world. But that's a viewpoint, Nathan. One cannot call it a fact. And this is a scenario building. People, the governments, big companies ought to play with that scenario and say, what will they do?
Yeah. You've spent a lot of time advising companies, including in places like China.
I hope I still do and do in the future.
I yes, but talk to us about what it's like to navigate a company that is dealing with Chinese influence. How hard
Yeah.
is it to
First,
actually?
no,
Yeah,
no, it's a great question. First, I want the management. Forget the board. Boards are ineffective.
yeah.
To first to start thinking they are not competing with a Chinese company. They're competing with President Xi. It's a big mindset change. Second, if they can't beat them, how do they join them? I have in India now a company that is recruiting Chinese know-how. They have invited people from China to train them in India. They're getting a technology agreement they're going to build. You don't beat them, you join them. It has dangers of spying and all that stuff. China needs very badly Indian market, and they're going to get it. Alternatives for India are not better.
Well, let me ask this: what happens after President Xi is gone one day, perhaps due to
Great question. Now,
retirement, natural
no, it's a
circumstances?
great question. Nathan, you have to edit what I'm going to say.
Yeah, of
It's a very
course.
important question. If he dies without a successor, there will be a chaos. People are afraid of him. How many generals have been removed? How often? There are orders in Politburo. You cannot visit somebody else's home. If he passes without a successor, that's what's going to happen. It's nothing new, I'm telling you. It happens to every person who has a total control of the country. If he has a successor and he appoints that and lives another 5, 10 years, successor will be totally ineffective. Such people never give up power, plus their own security. Would the successor turn against him? You see, he's basically alone. People must understand. People who have absolute power, they are basically alone. Insecurity of survival always nags them. If he dies suddenly and the Politburo doesn't settle on a successor, there'll be a big chaos.
Do you think they would settle a successor quickly?
I don't believe so. I don't know it. Even if there was one, so long the president is alive, he will never indicate. It's a rule of the people who have total control. We saw in the case of Disney, Bob Iger had a total control. And look what happened. Fired two of them until a powerful person came into the board as chair and settled the issue and took Bob Iger's ego out. That's what needed. But it's not going to happen in China. No way.
Well, tell me this. How is it that China is different from the USSR was in like 1980? The USSR eventually
Very
collapsed.
simple. Very simple. Very simple. The Deng made the mission to get to industrial capacity equal to or better than America. Lie low, get it done. Advisor to him, Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, coached him. All mayors came to Singapore for 1 week training how to do that. And then America abetted by helping China build that. Taiwan abetted by helping China build that because they thought China will become modern, and even though they can be CCP, but will go towards the democratic principles. That was a deception, and it got caught in 2009. President Ho drafted that we must eliminate the world order anchored by America. It's in Mandarin. It's a document.
If you were leading a US company, what is one thing you'd want to know about how China's economic model works?
If any company is competing with China, they better get their feet there to see that. How does it work? It's very, very clear. Go down and spend a couple of weeks. See what are the companies directly competing in his field. How are they competing among themselves? How they hyper creating capacity and reducing unit costs. Which one got the highest market share? That will be picked up by president or his lieutenants to develop that for the world. It's there. I know by some of them. I've coached companies in China. CEO of Baidu, CEO of JD, organizations, being board of the company doing it. So you can learn that within 2 weeks.
Let me quickly shift gears on a question here, which is about biopharma. There seems to be a choke point. If China achieves 90% capacity in life-saving drugs, they effectively have a biological veto over Western
Of
healthcare.
course, they do have it now.
Why
They're coming
isn't
in.
why isn't this something that you hear about many U.S. leaders being concerned with? And what is the U.S.'s both immediate and long-term strategy to deal with this?
Media does not know anything in America about this.
Well, that's our
I've
goal
talked
for
to
this
the
podcast.
No, I tell you, I personally talked to the key guys in Financial Times. He's a good friend. So it's not any animosity. He doesn't get it to this day. To this day. He's ideological. He hung up on Trump's tariffs. I'm saying hate as much as you can. But look at the reality from the other side. They're not trained about the common sense of economic trade.
That makes sense. A quick follow-up on that is you've projected that our cumulative trade deficit, we've talked about it on this episode, with the China spear could be as much as 10 trillion or more. At what point does the debt itself become more of a kinetic weapon that Beijing can use to collapse a dollar?
I would say about 7 to 10 years.
Why that time frame? What happens then?
Unless some action succeeds against this 90% model. Because the amount of money they will be able to hold of dollars, that will have a major impact. And that could be as much as 10 trillion definitely in 7 years. Unless the reaction is done right to break the 90% model. Or they volunteer to reduce the 90% model.
As my final question, friend, because I want to be respectful of your time, run us through both a good case scenario for the US and the worst case scenario in dealing with China over the next 10 years. What is the best case for what can happen first?
Yeah, don't wait for 10 years. We've got to do it now.
And what do those concrete actions? But what do those concrete actions look like?
Yeah, I give you that. If there is no short term, there will be no long term.
No long term.
It's a hand-to-hand combat, so to speak. It's a chess move one after another. So one scenario is the Americans, Indians, and Japanese, particularly the South Koreans, to pick 10 industries and create hyperscale and build strength. No country alone is going to win. All the four are affected negatively by China. I should include Germany. They got their major problems. They may not collaborate. But I know the technologies exist in Japan. I've got detailed information. South Korea and the United States. I would include Israel. 4 people can create a joint, and India, by the way. 5 countries can create joint productions. We create hyperscale. You can compete. Yes, you can. Because the ratio is 3 to 1. You know what I mean? Average cost is $3. Marginal cost is $1. They sell at marginal cost.
What is the worst case scenario? you've said, China has America by the throat. It's the subtitle of your book, China's 90% model.
It is true.
But
And you know why it is true? They have done it. No, let me explain why it is true. They can pick any industry today. In that industry, they supply critical materials without which industry cannot work. Every single one. APIs in pharma, critical ingredients in chemical, magnets in auto, and more. So they can stop any of those anytime and stop the industry. That's why it is at the throat. Either you negotiate to their liking or you beat the coercion.
let's walk through a scenario. Let's say China decides to not militarily, but to attack U.S. pharma. What would that look like from China's perspective?
Yeah, they're doing it already. They have the drugs. People like Merck and others have their subsidiaries in China. Those drugs are coming at 1/10 of the price.
But
And they're good.
so far, U.S. companies are doing just fine.
No. You start on the signals. It's happening. It is happening. So it's small right now. A stock market is not the right signal. They have all kinds of things they do, mergers, acquisitions, cutting costs. A stock market doesn't know what I'm talking. When the collapse of a company comes, you will see that. But make no mistake, Nathan, it is happening now. Drugs are coming at 1/10 of the price.
What will
I
that
talk to these guys all the time.
What will that do to both U.S. consumers and U.S. companies once we see this?
U.S. consumers love it because it's so cheap.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the U.S. consumer doesn't know what we are talking. It's fantastic. High quality, lowest cost. Nobody can compete. Stock market, we're going to continue to make money because the investment is being made by China.
Will U.S. companies survive?
You will see them declining. Go back and look at the list of the companies in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio have disappeared. It's all there. Go and visit, drive a bicycle, or drive a car. So one day I was talking to a former CEO of Ford, who went around and came back to me. He said, Ram, this is all barren there. So this has happened. It's not in news.
How would you handicap the U.S. over the next year in dealing with China? Are you confident in the U.S. government's approach?
Right now, they got to negotiate industry by industry to reduce the 90% model. They don't have to do for all industries and give technology. And Nathan, you brought the best out of me because that's a solution nobody has thought about. Negotiate industry by industry.
And you think we can do that effectively?
Yes, we can because they want technology. I've got to give something. But you don't negotiate a dying industry like solar.
Right.
The new industry that we were going to build it, and you do this, and they will probably do that. Must have been negotiated. They want something, you want something.
Well, Ram, I want to be respectful of your time. You've generously given us almost 40, 45 minutes. For our listeners, where can they find your new book, which I believe came out last week? I think it did. China's 90% model.
Yeah. It should be every manager, every investor, every government employee in every country should read this and understand and digest it where we are going.
Well, Ram, thank you for joining Clearer Than Truth.
Let me just get one more thing.
Yeah.
We had solar 7 years ago. It's gone in America. The number of these things we had 7 years ago, 6 years ago, and the 90% model obliterated these companies in the Western countries. That's what people don't know.
Well, certainly has implications for every living person to see how the next both
Exactly.
year and 10 years unfold. But I want to thank you again for joining the podcast, and I look forward to having you on again soon. Thanks again for joining this episode of Clearer Than Truth. Be sure to tune in next time.